Increase. So this award lets me know that good morning, bonjour, comment ça va? Et toi, ça va très bien. Ni hao, hola, bienvenue, Wan Ying, bienvenidos, bienvenita, namaste, and welcome. Welcome to another exciting episode of Gem Hunter Stories. My name is Barry B. Mixon, and I am a gemmological storyteller. And what I do here on this show each week is I take the art, science, history, and magic of gemstones, precious metals, and fine jewelry. And I put it all together into a story. What I've discovered over many years now is that so many of the same characteristics, the same traits, the same attributes, the same concepts that we use to appraise gemstones can be found in people. So what I do is I take those gem stories and I use them as a template, as a bridge, as an inception point to help people, to empower people, and sometimes to remind people to take time to discover the value of their stories, to take a moment in your life to understand how what you do and what it means to people around you, how, just like in the gemstone, how your life interacts with the light. Today's show, thank you, Barbara. Today's show is a continuation. It's a continuation of what I was talking about last week's episode. I feel like those old time movies. In our last episode, we saw our hero, tell you how old I am, the Long Ranger. But in my last episode, what I was talking about was living in a place called Once Upon a Time. Because a lot of people didn't understand how I got to where I was last month, or the things that I've done and the things that I'm doing. But this week, what I want to do is take it to the next step. Not only am I going to tell you how did I get out of homelessness, but also I'm going to tell you how I became a gemmological storyteller. How did it all happen? How did it all come together that I'm doing what I'm doing? So what I want you to do is I want you to just sit down, because it's hard. This is not a hard concept, but you need to really understand the power of it. You need to understand what this means. This is the symbol of my company, the Gem Hunter, Gemmological Appraisals and Storytelling Services, art, science, history, and magic. These gemstones, this gold, the rubies, emeralds, sapphires, citrine, diamonds, and of course gold. These gemstones, this metal, the whole history of mankind revolves around this. And what I'm going to tell you today will change your life. You don't see me laughing, anything. The information that I will tell you today, that I will share with you today, will change your life. I don't care, male, female, gay, straight, young, old, black, white, whatever. It will change your life. And this is not something that I came up with. This is literally universal law. No matter what religion you are, this is it. So today, what I'm going to tell you right now is how I got out of homelessness. I told you guys last week that I wasn't homeless because of alcohol. I wasn't homeless because of drugs. I was homeless because I was of anger. The anger inside of me. I told you that my mom, who I love dearly today, my mom was who she was back in there. So literally, I spent my whole entire childhood feeling like I was nothing. And I told you, I didn't know my name until I was 12 because it was everything else other than Barry. And that was inside of my system like a cancer. And it just metastasized. It just grew and grew. And some of you out here watching this show today totally understand exactly what I'm talking about. How it's so painful when someone who you love, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your family member, someone has told you in your life that you are nothing. So for me, and it manifests in so many different ways, whether it be alcohol, whether it be drugs, whether it be just disruptive behavior. So for me, it was anger, and it sat inside of me. And what I started to do was do destructive things. Even though all the things I had accomplished, all the things that I had done, I was still doing destructive things because in my head, I was nothing. So I wound up being homeless. The mistakes, the decisions I made led to that. And I've told you that story. Now let me tell you how I got out of it. How I got out of homeless. You ready? How I got out of homelessness wasn't the homeboy hookup. I didn't hit the lottery. None of that. How I got out of homelessness was a story. Was a story. You need to understand that it was a story. When I competed in the World Championship of Public Speaking in 2012, and the name of my speech was in the winter of 1992, telling the story of me being homeless. I didn't win. I didn't even place. And part of the reason for that, which I've realized over the years, was because people had a hard time understanding how my life changed because of a book. Because of a book. And the book wasn't necessarily the Bible. But what I tell you today, what I will tell you forever, that God did not give. And again, I don't really go to church. Thank God for people like my good friend Marie, who has tapped me in little. I'm a young person in Christ. Hey, Clifford, my good high school friend who's a pastor. I'm a babe in Christ. But what God brought me was a different book. And I can tell you exactly the line, the beginning of it. Last week, I talked about dream lofty dreams, and so you dream. As you dream, so you should become. The thing that really kicked it off for me was the part where it says, but he dreams of better things. But he dreams of better things. You need to just sit back and understand it. Just take it in. Just take it in. He dreams. And wherever I say he, ladies, anywhere I say he, please put she. But she dreams of better things. He thinks of intelligence, of refinement, of grace and beauty. Notice, no one gave him. He started to think about it. He started to think about intelligence, of refinement, of grace and beauty. That's what I started to do. I started to think about how I got here. I started to think about the things I was. I started to think about all the things I had done in elementary school, in high school, in junior high school, in high school. I started to think about all the things that I had done, all the places that I had seen. He conceives of and mentally builds up an ideal condition of life. See, what people don't understand, and again, this is coming from someone who don't go to church. What I realized about prayers, prayers are wonderful, but prayers are small in comparison to a story. Or let me say it like this: when you have a prayer and you wrap it around or put it inside of a story, when you begin to see the trees and the lake and the river and the building and the person that you want to be with and the car you want or whatever you want, when you begin to see it, you are basically packaging your prayers in a way that God says, yeah, okay, I can see that. He conceives of, mentally builds up an ideal condition of life. I started thinking to myself, what would my life be? What did I want in my life? The vision of a wider liberty in a larger scope takes possession of him. What happens is you begin to believe it. You begin to believe. You begin to believe it. It doesn't happen right away. Think about it. Those of you, especially those of you who are into any type of a superhero, whether it be Marvel or DC, there's always that moment when Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Iron Man, the Hulk, there's always that moment when they begin to believe in the Matrix. Remember that scene when Morpheus sat there, all those bullets were coming to him and he just said no? He began to believe. The larger scope takes possession of him. Unrest urges him to action. And he utilizes all his spare time and means. When you homeless, you don't have nothing but spare time. That's all you do have in abundance, time. So I started just to think. I started to see it. I started to believe it over and over and over and over and over again. I remember when I got to this part, when I began to understand this part, I can tell you exactly where I was. I was on around 22nd Street. Those of you know Chicago, 22nd, 18th Street, around there, right next to the river. It was cold as hell. But the guys would kind of get together. A lot of the veterans were down there and we would make fires and stuff. And I remember sitting there trying to just keep from getting frostbite and warming myself up on those big 50-gallon drums. And I was smiling. I was thinking about this because I would play it in my head all the time. And I remember just kind of like unconsciously smiling. And this guy who was next to me, I think his name was Carl. Carl said, "What the hell are you smiling?" And of course, he said a whole lot more than that because, Carl was like real rough. He literally fought in like the Korean War. He was just way back, an old grade. What the hell are you smiling at? And I said, I'm not going to be here. The hell you not? You better go ahead and dig in and get used to it. I said, I'm not going to be here. God did not give me this book. And I literally was quoting this book. Unrest urges him to action. And he utilizes all his spare time and means, small though they are, to the development of his latent powers and resources. See, what happens is once you start believing in your story, the story that you created in your mind, things start happening. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's no longer amazing to me now, but then it was amazing because the things that I thought about started happening. People, places, food. I started getting food. Situations happen where I was able to eat. To the development of his latent powers and resources, you start to think about what you can do. Understand that what I do today started from an insult. An insult. My ex-wife, and I love her to this day, my ex-wife told me point blank that I was a fountain of useless information. Really? Imagine. And what's so funny is all the people that I was with, the marriages, the relationships of it, have been people who basically was saying the same thing that my mother was saying, that you ain't nothing, you never gonna be anything. So when my wife said that, I remember working, because she worked for a construction firm, and I got a job and I was a laborer. And I remember they would just put me out in the field because, they really didn't want to work with me because I wasn't one of them. So they were just like, Mixon, get your ass over there. And they put me in this field of wood, like a forest. And I had to organize all the wood and pull the nails out. That was my job for like 8 hours. They would just leave me alone out there. So I would have conversations with God saying, you know what? She is right. I talk a lot. I talk all the time. I love knowledge, but what are you going to do with it? The development of his latent powers and resources. When you begin to believe in that story, in your story, the more you believe, the more things happen next. So the next line is very soon, so altered has his mind become that the workshop can no longer hold him. What happens is that door, that wall that was there, that blockage that you had in your mind, that wall, I don't care if it's 20 feet thick, that there was no escape. You was in a room with 4 walls and no doors. And when you begin to understand this, the development of the latent powers and resources, very soon so altered has your mind become that the workshop can no longer hold him. All of a sudden, a door that was not there was there. It becomes. And those of you who read the Bible, no, I'm not talking about anything that's not in the Bible. It just is put in a different way. It becomes so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life. Notice, I don't have to look at the screen. This is inside of me. That it falls like a garment. It falls, it falls out of his life as a garment is cast aside. It falls out of your life, ladies and gentlemen. You become different. You start to see the world in a different way. And with the growth of opportunity, which fit the scope of his expanding powers, he passes out of it forever. Forever. You no longer are where you are. You no longer are where you are. It's layered. It happens over time. I can tell you that this works and it will change your life. I can't tell you when it's going to happen. It's layered. And that's where that's where pearls came in. I got out of homelessness. And when I read this, when I started to read this, when I asked God, like, God, if you can get me out of here some kind of way, I have no idea how this is going to happen. I was in the depths of hell every day. So when I made that promise to God that if you got me out of this, I would spend the rest of my life helping people not to feel the way I felt about myself. Come on, think about it. There's so many people watching this show all over the world who know exactly what I'm talking about. When I talked about a couple of episodes again, Francois, strong, successful. Francois told me that his father told him that he hated him. His whole family was against him. His story was my story. So when I started studying gemology, I began to read what it took to make a gemstones, and I realized, oh my God, this is a pearl. See, what people don't understand about pearls, and this was the gemstone. I have a whole separate degree or certification in pearls, because what people don't understand about pearls is pearls come from pain. Pearls is the only gemstone that comes from a living organism and is created by a living organism, and a pearl comes from pain. It does not, let me get that out your head. It does not come from a grain of sand, because what an oyster does, or a mollusk, they breathe water that passes through them. So sand is a part of that. So it can't be sand. It's a parasitic infection. It is a bacterial infection that gets into the sex organs of that mollusk. Anybody who's ever had a UTI, a urinary tract infection, knows what I'm talking about. I've never had one, but people have told me how painful. If you pass the kidney stone, same difference, except that with the bacterial infection or the parasite that's in the oyster, in the sex organ, you can't pass it. It's in them. They don't have hands. There's no way to get rid of it. So what a pearl does is secrete nacre, N-C-N-A-C-R-E, nacre, over layers, over and over and over and over and over and over and over. It surrounds the parasite. It surrounds the bacteria. It surrounds the invading object, the foreign object that is in the sex organs of that oyster. And from that comes a pearl. That's you. That's you. And we all know people who have gone through horrible things in their life. Horrible things in their life. They've been molested as a child. They were raped. Their mother beat them. Their father did horrible things to them. Everything. Their brother, their sister, all kinds of things. But we also know people that despite what they've gone through, despite what they've endured, they became something beautiful. So how I became a gemmological storyteller, think about it. Think about it. It becomes so out of harmony with their mentality that it falls out of their life as a garment is cast aside. And with the growth of opportunity which fit the scope of their expanding powers, they pass it out of it forever. You know how pearls got started? Cultured pearls? We're not talking about natural pearls. It started from a man named Mikimoto. Mikimoto, this is right after World War II. Mikimoto was poorer than poor. He was a fisherman. And after the war, Japan was totally devastated by the war, not to mention the two atomic bombs. They lost in every way. The economy was nothing. Mikimoto had a wife, and his wife was actually connected. His wife was like part of the hierarchy, so he was just a peasant, and she married him, and they loved each other. So he had to prove that he was more, and he had the crazy idea. That he could create a pearl. That he as a child, he used to sit by the bank or watch the boats, the pearl divers go out, and he was fascinated by what the pearl is. And in his mind, he said to himself that he could somehow a way create a pearl, create something that God made and duplicate it. He believed. No different than the movies that we spend millions, billions of dollars watching. That scene when I'm 17 years old. I'm looking at Luke Skywalker going down the Death Star. Darth Vader's behind him, sighting in. I've got you now. All his crew, his whole squadron was destroyed. And in his mind, he said, "You heard Obi-Wan. Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke." Superman, how many Batman, all these movies where it comes to that point where the superhero has to believe. So I became a gemmological storyteller because I started to see how it works. I started to understand what this meant in real time. I was started to see evidence that the things that I thought about, the things that I wanted to be, the things that I hoped again and again and again. And think about it. I used to read this every hour on the hour. I used to say this when I was in that field of wood and it was cold and I was out there by myself. I used to say this all the time. And from that, I became, well, actually the wood part came after I was homeless. But when I was homeless, I know I was no longer homeless because things started changing. That's how I got out of homelessness. This book, The Power of Stories. The Power of Stories. People talk about the power of prayer. Yeah, all I did was take what you guys know, you who know the Bible and went to church and stuff, you calling prayers, it's a story. All I did was create a story because my stories literally went the same direction that your prayers went. God, please. I just gave God a blueprint of what I wanted. So when I started studying gemology, I didn't really go into it thinking that there was a connection. I just liked the gemstones. It was kind of cool. It was a job in the beginning. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But as I started reading about it, when I started reading how a pearl is made, this is an object that is like one of the oldest substances, not all the substances, one of the oldest types of gemstone on earth. Cleopatra had this 5,000, 6,000 years ago. There was an understanding of what a pearl is. So as I started reading and understanding how a pearl was made, I said to myself, that's me. That's me. The layering process, saying it again and again and again. Understand that this beautiful pearl that you're looking at right now came from pain. It came from something, a disturbance. It came from something that was foreign to what that pearl was inside. So those are the things that you have to understand, where you are, what pain is going on inside of you, and you create a story around that pain. You create a story around that pain. I survived homelessness because I started thinking to myself, I started imagining that I wasn't homeless. I literally started imagining that I worked for National Geographic and I was like some kind of in-depth reporter, undercover reporter, and that I would tell this story, when I came out for the other side. And when you begin to understand the power of putting your mind to something and creating it from there, your whole life changes. And when we come back, I'm going to show you how those same principles that we use in gemology will work in your life. When I say come back from the other side. Every time I see that commercial, I'm so excited. I can't wait to start the Patunk Club here in Chicago, bring that here. But so let's get back to pearls. When you begin to understand what a pearl is, when you begin to understand how this came about, this is a simple organism. This is a pearl. An oyster is one of the earliest organisms on Earth. And this is how that works. So when you begin to understand, not only the stories, when you begin to understand science, as I was studying gemology, I began to understand that the same principles that exist for anything really, but those same principles that exist for a gemstone, why can't you apply those things to yourself? So I became a gemmological storyteller because what fascinated me was how many things, how many concepts, how many things that I was reading about in all these books that I have, how you could make the analogy to yourself. Like, for instance, color. I came to this understanding about color. Something had happened in the United States. Those of you who are my gem hunter family from other places in the world, you know the problems that we have in this country, especially in this city of Chicago, with violence, with gun violence all over the country. And someone, I don't know who exactly, I don't remember exactly the incident, but someone got shot. Some person of color got shot and killed because of the color of their skin. And I remember at that point in my gemmological journey, the gem hunter, the whole concept of the gem hunter really started about 2006. I started gemology 2004. So 2006 was when I really started understanding. And I remember sitting at my desk watching, listening to WBBM, which is a news station here in Chicago. And they were talking about how someone got killed and just over just the color of their skin. And I remember thinking to myself, how crazy that is. How crazy it is. Not only just the person, that the fact that someone lost their life, but they lost their life because of the color of their skin, which is when you are a gemologist, that whole, not just being a black man, how crazy that is, but to be a gemologist, it's even more crazy because the whole profession of gemology is about color. You can't, every book I have in my collection, I have hundreds of books about gemology. I've been doing this for 19 years, and almost there is no gemstone that is not valued because of their color. Color is the thing. People talk about the 4 C's. The first C is color. And when you talk about pearls, you talk about an object that comes in almost every color of the rainbow. Every color of the rainbow. So now take that concept that a pearl starts from pain, from a bacterial infection, from a parasite, and because of the outer lip of whatever species of mollusk that is, it gets its color. It gets its color from that. That the color that's just on the outer lips of that basically influences the color of what it is. A Chinese golden pearl didn't decide to become that. It became that. A Tahitian pearl, or what people call a black pearl, didn't choose that color. It became it. So I started thinking to myself, how is it that we live in a world where we have so much problems with color? The color of someone's skin. I did not choose to be this color. I mean, it's cool. It's nice. If I had a choice, if I had a choice of color, I'd probably be like fuchsia. I liked Avatar because the blue people, I thought it was kind of cool if I had a choice. But when I was born, the guy was sitting there just before I was born. The guy was sitting there. He was just like, Mr. Mixon, okay, we're about ready to send you down. What color? What you want? I wanted fuchsia. The guy said, fuchsia. No, we don't have that available. How about green? No, we don't have that available. How about pink? I don't have that available. What color is available? Brown. I was like, oh, man, just brown? That's it? That's it. Okay. But so you're going to judge me on the color of my skin that I had no choice in the matter? And yet, you spend thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. Here's a story. Julius Caesar, and so we did this a couple years ago. Julius Caesar was straight up. You think Jeffrey Epstein was bad? He was nothing in comparison to Julius. Julius Caesar had like 500 women. I mean, I literally read that. He had 500 women, plus he was married. And Julius Caesar messed with boys and girls, so he was real special. But he had one woman named Servilia. And what's interesting is when you read it, understand the story, Servilia was more than likely the mother of Brutus. Yeah, you know Brutus, et tu Brutus, the one that was like stabbing Julius Caesar at the end on Barbara Beckley's birthday, March 15th. That was Servilia's son. But Servilia was just unbelievably gorgeous. According to whatever, just unbelievably gorgeous. Like, 500 women, Julius Caesar said, yeah, that's my girl right there. And they kidnapped her. And they was asking for all kinds of money. What Julius Caesar gave them was one black pearl. And when they do the research, and just from the description, they said this pearl was so magnificent. This was like the largest black pearl ever. And he got it in England. That's part of the reason why Julius Caesar conquered so much, because he was into jewelry. He was into gemstones. If you had gemstones back in if you had a pearl back in those days, oh, you were Bill Gates rich. Okay, you were Elon Musk rich. Whoever's the richest man in the world, that's who you were. So he traded one black pearl for Servilia, and for 6 million centeres. And when you do the money conversion of 6 million Roman centeres to today's money, that pearl was worth $500 million. $500 million for a black pearl. So how is it that a black pearl can be valued at that, but a black person, or a person that comes from that country who happens to have color is not valued? How's that? How do we live in the world? Every color on here, you know people that look like this. You know people who have that is this dark, and you know people that is just white. Okay? You are in every shade, pink, the gold, the colors, the tan, all that. We value color. This is the whole thing, the gemology, color. We value color. We spend millions of dollars on color. And what you really think about it, it's not just with pearls, it's in every gemstone. Every gemstone is not only there's only two types of gemstones. I've told you before. It's either your allochromatic or your idiochromatic. Allochromatic is when the color, here's your basic structure, and the color is a foreign object, is an element that gets into your structure and you become that color. Or your idiochromatic. Those of you who are born in August, peridot, you're an idiochromatic gemstone. That your gemstone peridot is idiochromatic, meaning the color is built in. Isn't that just like us? Isn't that just like human beings? That either your skills that you got in your life, either all of us are human beings. And some of us, our skills were brought to us. Our mother, our father, a coach, a teacher, someone put that skill inside of us. Or some of us, the Mozarts, the Miles Davis, the Albert Einsteins, the Katherine Johnsons. Some of us were born with it. Some of us knew Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps' mom just threw him in a pool, and because of his feet and his ankle flexion was such that he had large feet, he was basically like a fish in the water. So how many gold medals he has? Because he's idiochromatic. And when I began to understand and make the connection, that's when I became a gemmological storyteller. That's the story that I wanted to tell. That's why I don't sell really jewelry. That's why I don't really do a whole lot of appraising, because when you really begin to understand the power of stories, that we praise all of mankind. How is it that we have a object, pearls, that is valued in Asia, in India, in Africa, in Australia, in Europe, in South America, in Central America, in North America, in all the islands? How is it that we have a gemstone that comes from an oyster, A transgendered organism. I want you guys to get that while some of you are tripping like, oh my God, transgender. That's a part of nature. Look it up. All oysters start out as men and they turn female. And some of them go back and forth again, which kind of would be kind of an advantage to me. But, I'm just stuck with being a guy. But anyhow, yeah. How is it that something we value that does that, but yet we don't value it in other ways? When you're a pearl, when you're a gemstone, but when you're a pearl, you're a pearl. Are there different levels of pearls? Are there different symmetries of pearls? Yeah. But we still value it as a pearl. And what I started saying to myself, that was it. That was how I was going to keep my promise to God, that I would spend the rest of my life helping people discover the value of their story. Because I almost can guarantee you, whatever characteristics that you have, you're too hard, you're too soft, you're too delicate, you break easily, you're beautiful on the outside, emeralds, but you got issues on the inside, emeralds. This is an analogy to gemstones. See, I don't have to argue with nobody. I don't have to get into whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat. You can't tell me nothing. I have an object that has existed from the beginning of time. And the only question that I have to ask is, how is it that you see that like that and yet you can't see it in other ways? I'm trying to find my cursor. How is it? How is it that we live? How is it that carat? You know what carat means? Carat in gemology means weight. So this is a 4,600 carat diamond. Is it real? No. It's weight. That's how much this weighs. That's what carat. So why do we live in a world where people do fat shaming? Why? You wouldn't fat shame a diamond. You wouldn't. If I gave any woman that's watching this show, the ones that like diamonds, even the ones who don't like diamonds, if I gave you and to say, hey, listen, Nina, if I give you this gemstone, here's a 4,600 carat diamond. Hey, would you want it? Yeah. Wouldn't even think nothing of it. Oh my God, other than where did you get it from? You would value it. So how do you not value people whose body types might be that? It might be that. Does it take away from their value? When I was homeless, I had 3 degrees: biology, chemistry, and biochemistry. I got one of these days, I'm gonna find my old pictures. I've lost a lot of stuff over the years of all the ribbons and medals I got in the Marine Corps. But nobody knew that when I was out in the streets smelling like just, oh my God, does a human being can even smell? Are you even alive? That's how badly I smelled. But nobody knew that because they didn't know my story. That's what being a gemmological storyteller does. And when you begin, and I'm not saying that you need to go to school to do it and everything else, because one, it costs a whole lot of money. But when you really understand, every time you look at a gemstone, understand that there's somebody in your life, or including you, that mimics, that duplicates, that has the exact same characteristics. The exact same characteristics of what that is, the colors of that. This is the world we live in. We live in a world where there are people with all those beautiful colors. People from, I'm just thinking of just places where, people from, that country in Africa where the people are like the Sudan, where the people are like black, okay? The people in Colombia, the people in Asia, the people in Europe, the people in Ireland, who, because there's not a lot of sun, they are like white. When I came to Ireland, I was just like, man, do all the vampires live here? That's the world we live in. So how do we judge each other based on color when there is a profession, when there is a thing called gemmology, where the whole history of mankind has been about getting something of color? How does that happen? You have to care for a pearl. A pearl is a something from a living organism, so you can't set a pearl out in the sunlight, because what happens, it will what's called craze. It will crack, it will break up. You can't put a pearl. When you put a pearl on, those of you who have pearls understand that the pearl should be the last thing you put on and the first thing you take off when you're getting dressed. Why? Because you don't want to put a pearl is not durable. So that's not, maybe you have somebody in your life who is not the strongest person. They're beautiful, they're intelligent, but they're not the strongest person. That's not their thing. So maybe you want another kind of gemstone. When you begin to understand stories, you begin to understand the same situation that exists for gemstones. And the thing about a gemstone is a pearl is a pearl. There'll never be anything else. That's not the situation with you. That's what I got out of it. I say, well, wait a minute. If this is the program, if this is the concept, is a scientist, if I understand that every time I put chromium into aluminum oxide and I'm going to get a ruby, then what happens if I put education inside of me? What if I started to read? What if I started to change my diet? What if I started to just do little things? Very soon, so altered has his mind become. No, what? I'm sorry. That's not even what I want to say. Small though they are, he begins to develop his latent powers and resources, small though they are, to the development of his latent powers and resources. How do you not see it? It's right there. There's evidence. That's what happened. I started looking in that's why I love doing this show, because every week I'm like, really? I never even thought about it like that. I never thought about it like that. These are Tahitian pearls. The reason why they that color, look at the lip. Think about who you are. Think about the people in your life, the things. What Tyler Perry just bought BET and I forgot the other network that he just bought. He bought 2 networks. Tyler Perry was homeless once upon a time. And now he's buying whole entire networks. Why? Because he believed. He believed. He believed in his story. And because he believed in his story, he understood his value. And we can all do that. Because nothing has value without a story. Dreams are the seedlings of realities. This happened. This beautiful scene, I was there. This is not a something I got from, this is, I was there. I took this picture because 32 years ago, I began to believe that dream lofty dreams, and so as you dream, so you should become. And here's evidence of that. This is what I do. This is how I became a gemmological storyteller, to help people to discover the value of their story. So your homework assignment today is just to think. Just take some time to think about your life. Think about where you're at, where you want to be, and then create a story on how to get there. Make believe that you're a movie director. Get yourself a theme song, whatever you need to do. Imagine who would play you. I would have somebody like, I'd have to have somebody like Denzel or somebody like, or I don't know who. I'd have to have somebody on that level and create your story. So I hope you enjoyed today. I hope that answers that question. How did I become homeless? How did I get out of homelessness? And how I became a gemmological storyteller. You got any questions, please send me an email. But until next week, my name is Barry B. Mixon. I am a gemmological storyteller. And what I want you to do this week is to think about the value of your story. So until next week, au revoir, à te tella, voilà. Here's a gem bit. It turns out that the older an oyster is, the better quality of pearl it produces. I don't know why that story just resonated with me so strongly. Discover the value of your story.